Yo, what's up guys, it's Talon. Today we have a patch review of patch 5.3. As this video is released, the patch should already be out for you guys, but we're just going to go over the gameplay changes and the changes that are more relevant to climbing. I'm not going to go over the skins or anything like that, just the things that are relevant to the gameplay and to actually understanding how to climb and everything. And I'll speak on how these champions will probably change in the meta, and then I will have a meta report video a couple days to a week after the season starts telling you guys the real specific meta and how to counter the meta and everything like that. So getting right into the champion changes, they're changing a lot of AD carry champions to give them worse initial early game stats, but better scaling. So Ezreal is getting less AD, but more AD per level. Xayah the same thing. Vayne the same thing, except attack speed per level instead of AD. Kalista also the same thing. So all of these champions are going to be better in the late game. Tristana as well is also getting the same change. And so really, this is just going to make these AD carries scale better. I don't think there's a ton to mention on them. I do think that it doesn't change their overall strength that much because they'll be weaker early but better late game. So if you're more of a late game player, you'll obviously like this change. And if you like using these champs in the early game and really trying to snowball games, it might be a bit harder for you. But as a whole, just AD carries these certain ones becoming stronger in the late game. Additionally, Kalista's third ability is getting more AD scalings as well. Once again, a better change for the late game. And Tristana's bomb is also getting more AD scaling. So basically, all of these AD carries are just becoming much better in the late game, which as a change for as a whole, I don't think changes these champions' place too much in the meta. We'll kind of have to see how they fit in after the actual changes with gameplay. But at the moment, I'm just thinking, they'll be a bit stronger in the late game, a bit weaker in the early game. Okay, and then one thing that I forgot to mention, guys, Heimerdinger is getting released. We'll probably have some type of video, or you can watch a video later on how the champion works. I'm not really going to explain how he works, but he is coming out, and by the time this video is released, he will already be out. All right, and then the last champion change we have is Milio. Milio's passive is now going to give a bit less bonus damage, just 2 per, or just 2 base damage. And then the second ability is going to give less range, which I think is great because holy crap, this range buff is insane on Milio. It's like Milio Caitlyn, for example, is just such an insane combo. You're literally getting hit across the map. So I'm very glad that they're reducing the overall percentage buff in terms of range on the second ability, and then the ultimate's also getting a lower cooldown. So I do think this will make Milio a bit weaker because I did feel like Milio was one of the strongest supports, especially enchanters in the game, and I think it'll bring Milio a bit more in line with the rest of the supports. But I do still feel like Milio, especially with Caitlyn or other long-range champs or other hyper carries, will still be a very strong champion. Okay, so now for items, if you kind of remember before when they had the light and dark items, they're now having Hextech items, and there's 4 items that are receiving a Hextech change. So Soul Stealer, we're not going to go over the entire item because these are all the same things. We're just going to go over the changes. So the changes in Hextech Soul Stealer are that now, alongside the fact that if you do get a takedown within 3 seconds of damaging an enemy, you get a 25% cooldown reduction, which you did before. You now also steal 15% of their movement speed, and you get 75% of their ability haste. So this is going to be really good on champs who like having quick ability cycles to really burst people down. So I'm thinking champs like Vex even, Syndra, Lissandra, a lot of just burst mages especially, but even, poke mages are going to benefit a lot from this item. So I'm thinking those champions, those kind of burst mages are going to be the most benefited in terms of this item. But I do think assassin, AP assassins like Akali also might be able to utilize this item quite well. I think of all the Hextech items, this is probably the one that's the strongest out of or getting the biggest buff rather. So I do think that this is definitely an item you should try out on a lot of the AP champions, especially assassins and burst champions in general. After that, we have Hextech Stormrazor, which again, all of the same things as before. The only difference is now with the passive, it will additionally, when you slow someone, it'll grant you 60 movement speed. I think this is pretty OP too, to be honest with you. I think Caitlyn specifically as a champion benefits from this immensely. Getting extra movement speed right after slowing someone is going to allow you to kite so well, but just so many champions are going to be able to use this as a first item now. It's going to make it really, really easy to kite people and just make pretty much any crit AD carry just extremely OP. I would say building this item anytime that you don't need specific stats such as Bloodthirster because you need Vamp into poke champions, or you don't need a Shield Bow because you're into like assassins. If you don't need that, those 2 starting items on a crit champ, Stormrazor is probably going to be the crit item for you now. And then Hextech Black Cleaver after that, again, same as always. If you don't know how Sunder works, the passive, basically dealing damage to someone will reduce their armor by 6%, and then you can get up to 4 stacks, and each stack will do an additional 6%, so you could get up to 24% overall reduction. And then once you have that stacked up now, you will get 40 additional movement speed as you're moving towards someone. So basically, any champion who can really quickly stack this will then get a really good movement speed buff, and it'll be quite strong on. So Darius is like the most obvious champion because he already likes building Black Cleaver, and obviously you want 5 stacks on him. And so him having 4 stacks on both his passive and then Sunder at the same time will make it so easy to catch up to people, get that final stack, and then just, you know, pop off. So he's definitely the main user of it that I can think of. I think basically any bruiser champion who likes, you know, trying to catch people out is going to benefit from it. I'm thinking Jace is obviously a champion I play. I do think it will be better on him, obviously, than before. I mean, I already built Black Cleaver on him. Renekton might utilize it decently well. These just general bruisers are going to be really benefiting from it, especially Darius, though I don't think it's going to be a huge change in comparison to what it was before. And then the last one is Hextech Zeke's Convergence. And so the change here is to the passive. Before, when you did the passive, it would cast a blizzard around you that would make your teammates deal more damage. And now it's going to instead slow nearby enemies and then also leave a trail, which will allow your enemies to get more movement speed. So I'm not exactly as sure onto when I would really use this item. I'm thinking in comps where you really want to catch people out and like dive into people, it's going to be nice because you're going to be able to slow people and then your team's going to be able to follow up. So I would say on really aggressive champions like Leona or Nautilus, if you do have, say, a lot of assassins on your team or champs like Darius and other really, you know, dive heavy champions and aggressive champions, it might work well, like in heavy melee comps, for example. If you have 4 melee champs on your team, you might want to build this type of item. All right, so then we have changes to support items. So now the first level of all 3 of the support items will give you an additional damage to a ward. So basically you'll be able to 2-shot wards instead of 1-shot ward, or instead of 3-shot wards rather. And then once you upgrade the support item, you will be able to 1-shot any ward. So this will obviously make supports able to clear wards and focus more on vision, which I think is a cool change overall, and will give supports a bit more of a focus on vision. Then we have some rune changes. The first one being Ixtali Sea Jar is no longer an item and is now a rune, which I think is great because nobody built this item. So it basically does the same thing that the item did, where if you hit a plant or anything like a blast cone, any of those vision plants, anything like that, you basically can pick up a seed that gives you, it will replace your wards or your trinkets for 60 seconds, and then you can place that wherever you want. So you can place like honey fruit where you want, or you can place the jumpy things, you know, the things you hit that you jump. I don't know what they're called, guys, but you can hit those things, right? So I actually think this might be a good rune for supports as well. This, alongside the changes to support items, will make potential like really good focus on vision and kind of roaming for supports. So I do think it will potentially be a good item on, or a rune on supports, sort of in place of Hex Flash if you're not as aggressive. So I would say like Braum is a great champ, I think might utilize it well. Maybe Recon, maybe some other enchanter supports could use this as well instead of like Transcendence or those types of things. I do think it might have some good opportunities to be quite useful. After that, we have Fleet Footwork. So now once you're at 100 stacks, you get 100% attack speed instead of the fact that you got sort of healing. So I think this might be good on some AD carries or on like ranged champions in lane phases. I'm thinking, yeah, like if you're playing a ranged top laner, you know, I know we all love ranged top laners. I think it might be pretty good for those. I think AD carries might be able to utilize it. Caitlyn is the one I'm thinking will utilize it the best. I think it'll work really well for just really quick burst damage alongside a Storm Razor Magnetic Blaster build. And so I'm most excited for Caitlyn, but any sort of ranged auto-attacking champion that's built around burst, I think can utilize this, and we'll definitely do some testing and, you know, talk to you guys more about that as we see it develop in the meta. And then lastly, we have Sweet Tooth. All that's changed here. It used to be if your teammate took honey fruit or you took it, you get 15 gold if you're close enough. Now it's only when you eat the honey fruit that you get 15 gold. So this is actually how it originally was a long time ago, and then they changed it. It used to give you 30 gold, but then they changed it to give you 15 and whatever. So, but yeah, basically now if you eat honey fruit, you only get you get 15 gold, but you can't be by your teammates anymore to get it. After that, we have a change to Elder Dragon. It's now becoming the Hex Elder Dragon, kind of the same as they changed the Baron to the Hextech T-Rex or whatever. So pretty much the difference here, when you're fighting the Elder Dragon, it will do the same things as other dragons do to you, but it will also have a lightning strike that can damage up to 3 people in your range. So it won't just be damaging the person hitting it, it'll be damaging 2 other people around potentially. And if it ricochets to less people, then it will do more damage as well. And then when you actually take down the Hextech Elder Dragon, it will give you a lightning strike ability. So basically when you damage someone, you will have like a lightning strike that can bounce to 2 other people. And then alongside this, it will have the similar effects as before, giving you the execution below 15% health and all of that. So I mean, Hextech Elder Dragon is going to be really OP. Elder Dragon was already OP. That's kind of the point of a game ending objective, is to be OP. So, you know, it'll be really good for ending games the same way as the regular Elder Dragon was. Then we have the T-Rex getting some changes as well. They're changing the base stats, so it's going to do less attack damage, but have more health, more armor, and I believe more magic resist. I think this is a typo. I think this is supposed to say like 50 to 150 or 50 to 115, because it would be in line with the armor thing, and obviously 50 to 15 just doesn't make sense, because it would obviously have to be a higher number than 50. So I'm pretty sure the magic resist is also getting buffed, and they just made a typo in the patch notes. So basically, it's going to be tankier but do less damage. Then they're changing the first ability of the T-Rex to now be a dash instead of just like the missile thing. And so what I think this will do is make it a lot more melee focused, because again, it's getting tankier but less damage, so it can go in a lot more. It can knock people up with this first ability as well. It's more going to be like an aggressive kind of fighting tool and a little bit less focused on sieging. The second ability is also going to have a lower cooldown, but the shield is going to be a bit weaker, though it will give more movement speed. So this, once again, kind of combat focused as the one before. It's still going to be good at pushing as well, but generally the T-Rex is shifting towards more combat. Also, the third ability getting a lower cooldown as well, doing more damage and dealing additional damage to minions. So it's probably going to like really like one-shot minions or do a ton of damage to minions. So overall, yeah, I think T-Rex kind of is getting buffed overall. It seems like it's a little hard to tell, but I think it is a buff. So I think T-Rex is going to be even stronger than it already was, which is a little surprising to me. And then the ultimate is also getting more damage, lower cooldown, and reducing your movement speed by less. So T-Rex is going to be kind of OP. It was already always a really good thing, but yeah, it's going to be pretty nuts. So I'm a little worried that it might be too strong and too hard to deal with. So definitely having a higher focus on getting the T-Rex in the newest patch, probably going to be beneficial as well. And then in terms of the mechanics, I think these are a lot of the same ones, apart from the last one where the Baron buff reduces 20% of damage taken by ally minions from enemy minions. But all the other things, you know, it's going to buff the minions around you and all the same things that the T-Rex did before. Okay, and then we have changes to the Scuttle. So now if you're helping a teammate kill the Scuttle, you actually get 25% of the gold. So that's kind of nice, because, you know, sometimes your teammates take the Scuttle from you or whatever, so you still get at least a little bit of gold from it. So that's a little cool. Then they're changing some things about the Scuttle as well. So for the first 7.5 minutes of the game, the Scuttle is the exact same as always. But past 7:30, it will now evolve into something different based on which side of the map you take it on. So if you take it on the Baron lane side of the map, it'll spawn the same thing that it always does. It gives you movement speed and vision and whatever. But it then also will open a gate at the back of Baron Pit, and you can access that if you got the Scuttle. So that's going to be kind of interesting in terms of, you know, potentially invading or stealing a Baron or things like this. It can be really useful. So I'm interested to see that. I think it's actually a pretty cool change overall. I do like it because it'll give a little more value on the Scuttle later in the game, because before people didn't really care about it late in the game. I mean, obviously the vision helped, but it wasn't, you know, overly focused on. And then in the Dragon lane, it'll give the same movement speed and vision as always. And then it'll also move up and down the river. I don't really think this is very useful, to be honest. I think the Baron lane one is way more useful. I don't think the Dragon one changes much, but, you know, that's still something to note. Then we have the Hextech toolkit getting added to the jungle, which, holy crap, this is one of the worst changes I've ever seen in any video game that I've ever played. This Hextech toolkit, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, if you remember in the lanes that you're in, when the circle drops and then gives you a random thing, sometimes it gives you that turret that kills you know, the enemy turret that like does damage to it, or it gives you the one where you can instantly kill a minion, gain gold from it, or the one where you can heal people, everyone on your team. All those ones, they're now adding that to jungle, and so every 100 seconds, from a minute and 10 seconds to 8.5 minutes, it will mark one of your jungle camps, and then if you kill that jungle camp, you can get a Hextech toolkit the same way that you would get one in lane. And then once an outer turret is destroyed, you no longer will get these, so it only spawns until that. So it's basically an early game change. So that's kind of something to note as well. And then when your jungle's marked monster is killed, it drops that toolkit, and then it'll stop spawning after 20 seconds. So you kind of got to take it right away. And then the markers will be in the jungle, so you'll be able to kind of see on the mini map, and the marks will last for 50 seconds. So if you don't clear the camp relatively quickly, then you won't get it. And then if you do pick up a new one, it will replace the old one. So those are like the main things to kind of note about it. It also cannot give the same like random drop 2 times in a row. And then the same player in a single game will only pick up the siege cannon once is also kind of something to note. The siege cannon is the one I was talking about that's really OP that gets you basically a free turret plate. So they're kind of balancing that. So I do at least like the balance that they're making to it. But basically, it's just adding more randomness to the game. This is by far one of the worst changes I've ever seen in any game. I despise the fact that they're adding more RNG to the game, more randomness. It's just not fun. These things can turn a lane around even when you're losing it. It's just, I don't like this being added to the jungle. I think it's really annoying, but you know, not the end of the world. You know, just annoying, not the end of the world. It is what it is. And then they're adding some new drops. The first one is a jungle rover, which basically will spawn a ward that will like guard your section of the jungle that you clear it on. And then if someone enters that, they'll basically get revealed and chased, kind of like how when you kill the tier 2 turret, there's that thing that follows you. I think it's going to be very similar to that. And then if the ward like doesn't stop seeing the target or the target leaves the jungle, it'll detonate and get vision of the entire area for 3 seconds. The other one that they're adding is the Hextech lens, which will scan an area for 10 seconds, and it'll basically reveal wards and traps and things like that. And then you can instantly kill the wards and traps when they're spotted. And then lastly, we have the healing thing that healed your entire team will now only heal yourself, and it'll heal you for your 15% max health rather than 15% missing health. So basically that means that it'll heal 15% of the overall health that your champion has rather than 15% of the health that you no longer have. So it'll give you more healing, but it's only on one person now. Then we also have the Scorpion. They'll change to the Scorpion is that now if it's killing minions and you're not near it, but you did take it, you'll get the gold and the XP from minions around it too. So it's going to be better now. You can just grab it, let it push the wave for you, and then recall. It's not going to be as bad as before. They have ping changes. Not really going to go over the ping changes. One thing I do want to note though is that you can get alerts for wards now. So when your wards reveal someone, you will get alerted by it. You'll basically see like a little notification and it'll let you know that someone's on the map. So I really don't like this because it kind of, you know, rewards worse players because you don't have to pay attention to as many things, but it's not the end of the world. Just, you know, removing a little bit of skill from the game, but it's not the end of the world. If they want to make it more accessible to worse players, I don't have a huge issue with it, though I'm not the biggest fan. And then that's about it. The showdown thing, I don't really know what this means. If any of you guys know what they mean by this showdown thing that I'm highlighting here, let me know. I don't really understand that, if that's related to the actual game or if that's like a separate mode. But yeah, my bad that I don't really know what that is. Last thing is that they are changing the ranked tiers. So now Master is going to be 3 separate tiers, each 10 marks. So I think it's 0 to 9 marks is Master 1, Master 2 is 10 to 19, and then Master 3 is 20 to 29. This doesn't really change anything. I don't know why they're doing it, but I guess they wanted to do that, so that's cool. But the other things are just not related really to gameplay, so that's really all it is for the patch. As an overall rating, I'd give like a B+ to the patch. I do think that the changes to items are pretty cool, and I like, you know, I think the 80 carry changes might be interesting. The Hextech change is also kind of cool to shift the game a bit, but none of this stuff is really especially exciting to me. It's just kind of whatever, just some changes, sometimes for the sake of change. So I don't know. Not the best patch, not the worst one, just, you know, these are the changes. I'll let you guys know how the meta really is shaping up in about a week's time or so once I've had some experience with it. Let me know your thoughts on the patch, and I'll see you guys in the next video.